Good morning and welcome to the third day of the IeSF 2013 World Championships. I am James Stress O'Leary alongside Panky, as I have been for the entire weekend, bringing you all of the games here from the IeSF finals, which is over in Bucharest, Romania. We are into our third place game, which means we do only have two series left, and this should be a good one between Denmark and Spain, and we can see the bans already coming out for this one.
Yeah, these guys have been, I don't want to say on the edge of the seat all morning, but going by what they were talking about in the pre-game chat, they were ready to go for quite some time, and unfortunately they had a slight delay, so they are diving straight through these bans. But again, there's nothing too crazy compared to what we've seen the rest of the weekend. It's nice to see Shyvana finally making her way into this ban section, as she's been very influential in some of the previous games. Very counterintuitive, I suppose to say, in some, when she's just sat there in the jungle, farmed and not done a whole lot of much, and unfortunately that's resulted in her lane just snowballing further and further out of control. But she's had her moments, and she's an incredibly strong champion right now, so when you're up against a team that knows how to use her and knows what to do with her, it's safer to ban her instead.
Yeah, and she's a champion that I've been speaking a little bit to, predominantly some of the challenger junglers. So I've been speaking to Dignitas UK's Impaler, as well as a couple of other people, Lowland Lions as well. That Shyvana really is, you were kind of alluding to, is a great champion in the jungle when your lanes are winning. But if your lanes aren't winning, it's very difficult to get them back on track as Shyvana, and that's one of her limitations. A jungler that doesn't really have that much of an issue in that respect is potentially the Lee Sin that we've seen Nii Godbro pick up as their first pick here. And we'll see where Denmark will go with the rest of their composition. It looks like they will be facing off against a Vi in the jungle and Thresh on support. So Denmark may be keeping their options open here with a potential Elise alongside that Lee Sin.
Yeah, I mentioned it before, they have that early pressure coming out of that Lee Sin, whether it's be in the top lane or the jungle. I'd rather sit in the jungle, because of course he can be a bit more all over the map, but we did see Godbro running in the top lane, and it is something he can do pretty well. And to be honest, it's just that option too. While up against Vi in their opposition jungle, they're both very strong pre-6 junglers, and I suspect they will put Lee Sin in the jungle for the DK side. For that reason, they need someone that can have that pre-6 presence to counter Vi's pre-6 presence, because she's going to be able to gank very early on. So putting Lee Sin up in that top lane, it's not necessarily going to get the most from him.
Ian, we're already seeing that early shaping of this team composition here from Denmark, with a lot of skirmish potential with this Lee Sin, and especially Zyra, who's able to disengage a lot with the Stranglethorns. It's a great tool for just avoiding any kind of mass conflict when you really can't take it. And it's something we've seen out of a couple of the teams this weekend that have just had this really strong pick potential. And that's very surprising. I hadn't even acknowledged yet that Zed hadn't been picked, and we were already through the bans. So surprising to see him come this far, but it's really going to be Morsu that's been playing him this weekend when it's been available. But Zed's a champion I'd expect most, at least mid laners, to have in their arsenal.
Yeah, we've seen Morsu do it in the top lane a couple of times, which is a little bit surprising, but he made it work very, very well. I suspect this will likely to be the middle.
Something that I wouldn't expect so much would be that Urgot that Gamble is hovering over, not a champion that we've seen all that much unless he has been alongside a Taric lane, and that was really at the tail end of Season 2 was one of the last times we saw Urgot attempted. I think I want to go out on a limb and say CLG did use him in the spring split of LCS Season 3, but Gamble will lock that in here, and that is an odd pick to me.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's a bit of a gamble. So it'll be interesting to see how it works up, especially with Zyra in that support role. It's quite a lot of long-range harass, providing that snare lands from Zyra with a plant, and then of course that's a free Noxian corrosive charge followed up by Acid Hunter spam, and that's quite a lot of damage. I mean, we've seen many Urgots, you get 3 Acid Hunters land, and that's about 60-70% of someone's health bar. So with a Zyra plant and a little bit of AP mixed in amongst that, Twitch is going to be a very, very susceptible target. So it's an interesting thought, it's an interesting strategy. As we also see, the last pick is Riven, so that Riven is going to go up into the top lane against whoever it may be, looking to be Elise. Oh, switched off at the last second as Lissandra. That's even worse for poor Riven, but it does mean that Lee Sin will end up in the jungle.
I think one of the things here that Denmark have got going for them is that Urgot just naturally becomes quite tanky as you build him along what is normally a completely different build path. It's more of an AD caster style where you pick up a Brutalizer, go for a Mana Mune, and then get extra damage that way. And you kind of end up with this natural tankiness from the champion and from the itemizations. And with that and Gragas, they're two carries that have that extra health, so it allows them to pick up a champion like Riven alongside that Lee Sin, who doesn't exactly build towards the tanky route as we see many top laners do. So I guess it's a way of getting more health on the team without inherently putting a tank in that top lane. It's not something we've seen in a very long time, but it may end up working out for them. I just don't quite see the position of Urgot here over other AD carries, if I'm being completely honest.
Well, no, to be honest, I think you did just explain it. It's that extra tank while still outputting a fair bit of damage, especially into the mid and late game. But it wouldn't work on a more traditional team comp because more traditional team comp is not running things like Riven and Lee Sin. Those are the damage. So here we've got massive damage coming at Mikhail's Gragas, which we've seen him do time and time again. We've got a fair bit of damage coming at Roldo, as Zyra's generally build a little bit of AP. Lee Sin, yes, he'll fall off and be a bit tankier more than anything else later on. Then he's got Urgot being in there and being big and in your face and just absorbing damage, while Riven is really outputting the AD damage for the team.
And now, one of the things that maybe, for people that have been watching League for quite a while, you may remember quite a few games of Urgot back in Season 2, but there were some various changes to Urgot that happened about a year ago, and it was one of the last times that Urgot was actually touched, where they reduced the range on his ultimate quite significantly. You normally used to be able to cast it from fairly far back and pick someone off, use that hyperkinetic position reverser, can't believe I still remember that after a year, and drag somebody back into your team. It's slightly more difficult to pull off these days, but nice to see Denmark running with something a little bit different from what we would expect here.
This is also best of three, remember, so this isn't all or nothing, and they are having, I'll just say, a little bit of fun, to be honest, in their first game, trying something a bit different, trying something a bit funky, and seeing if they can get themselves a quick and easy leg up, that morale boost from that first win, that slight advantage, getting that first point on the board. Why not?
Yeah, and as you were saying, they've been ready for this game for quite a while now, so they have obviously talked about what they were going to do here. So it's not as if they were in Champion Select and someone was like, Urgot, that's what we should play. And then everyone's like, oh, okay, let's pick that.
Don't be silly, Stress. Teams would never leave their decisions until the last second like that.
I wish I could say that in all seriousness, but there have been many times with many teams that have just been like, oh, we'll pick this, and then you speak to them after and they're like, that got countered completely by what was already picked, and we just weren't thinking. But
yes.
Nevertheless, Godbro on Riven should be a fairly interesting one to watch as well in that top lane, and again, we've seen Morsu on Zed. Will be interesting to see how Spain will use Zed to their advantage, but they have a very high damage team when you look at it. Zed, Lissandra, and Twitch will all output a lot of damage in the mid-game team fights, and we alluded to it earlier that Denmark really are going to be looking for these scrappy fights where they can pick one or two off in the jungle and then end up taking objectives from that tail end of the fight. We are now into the game. The pause has stopped, and Denmark on the blue side, Spain on the red. This is for third place here at the IeSF World Championships.
You mentioned those little scrappy fights. To be completely honest, the DK lineup's not too bad to team fight straight up either. The engage is going to be Urgot. The engage is going to be switching some squishy target in and amongst the squad. Then Gragas is going to ultimate between that switch target and the rest of their team, splitting them even further apart. And then they'll nuke down that first target using Riven Lee Sin. And then there's still a Zyra ultimate that can be placed between the two squads, between the squad and their extended member as well, if they still need more time to kill that first target off. And if they, even then, when those other four members are coming charging in, they put the Zyra ultimate down, you kill that first target, and everyone's suddenly standing on the Zyra ultimate trying to save him. Then they get knocked up, and you have complete free reign of those 4 remaining members to switch across, choose one of them, and nuke them down. And if that's a Twitch, so to speak, that's going to be a very, very dead, squishy Twitch when he's in the middle of that Zyra knockup. And this, by the way, is of course still the old patch, so the Zyra knockup still has that slight stun when he comes back down and lands, so it's slightly longer than it is on live servers.
Yeah, that is very true. 3.12, as you said. Now, something else to think about with Urgot, and it's another of the many questions that can arise from when you haven't seen a champion in a little while. Obviously, Season 2, we hadn't had all of those 2v1 lane swaps, and I would wonder how, in the early game, Gamble will be able to deal with things, because a lot of Urgot's damage comes from his abilities rather than his auto attacks, and that's why you tend to have to build him a lot more with a lot of more mana crystal items to just get that extra mana. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how it works out. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm not expecting it to do well, because anytime you're in a 2v1 situation, you always have the advantage there, but just another thought as we head into this game. Both teams, however, will look to be aggressive here. We've seen this ward at the backside all the way deep into the Spanish jungle. That will be able to spot out exactly who is heading up towards that top lane, so you can already see it's a thought in the minds of the Danish team.
It's that lane swap wall spotted out again for DK. And, well, the Spanish team are going to know that invade happened. They saw it with that early ward place, but they also noticed only half the team came back out again, so they know it's safe to save it and take this red buff, and she needs to keep up at XP. Yeah,
that means we will have Riven going up against Thresh Twitch in that bottom lane. Urgot and Zyra in the top against Lissandra. And now, I think you were talking a little bit about how Lissandra would have been fairly difficult to deal with when it came to Riven. So I guess this is a way of getting that Riven into a lane that maybe wouldn't completely destroy her, if that could kind of be said. It's always difficult in a 2v1.
It's still a pretty bad matchup for Riven, to be honest, but this is what's the problem, and it's Lissandra going very low.
Yeah, you can see off just one small engagement behind the creep wave, Lissandra gets shredded down, her health already below half, and it's going to be difficult, but both of the solo laners are having trouble here in their 2v1s.
I mean, a lot of that could have been avoided from Lissandra. She's just a bit too aggressive, a bit too far forward, trying to pick up that extra CS. She did not need it, could have waited for it to come to her. She's already got very good wave clear once it does hit the turret, so should have waited a little bit longer. But she's still got potions, she's still got health kits and stuff, so she does get it filled back up again, but of course, burning through those early on is less than ideal.
And now, one of the first times we've actually seen a deviation on the jungle paths here is Lee Sin will be coming up towards this top lane. One of the first times we've seen at this 3:30 mark that both junglers have chosen to go to the same lane rather than just go to their solo lanes in one of these swap-ups. So we'll see exactly how much damage can get done here. It's going to be fairly difficult because there's a fair amount of wave clear here from Vi and Lissandra, so I wouldn't expect too much tower damage, and that is why Lee Sin has dropped down, and Santorin once again spending very early time in the opponent's jungle, trying to hinder Vi as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the junglers here because of course the routes they took. Lee Sin stealing that red buff and then heading across to his own blue buff means he's on this top half of the map the entire time. Vi having to steal his red buff and then go do her blue buff means she wasn't going to be up here. So he had that spare time that he was going to be up there earlier on, and if Lissandra was in a particularly bad position, that would have been a 3v1 dive before Vi could get close. As it was, Lissandra wasn't doing too badly, and it gave Vi enough time to collapse in and come and join them, making it 3 for 2, and keeping them busy. But Santorin still just keeping an eye on that Vi and staying nearby.
Yeah, both junglers are just keeping each other in check in that top lane, and you saw the pings go down in mid lane to tell Zed that there was nobody around from the Danish team, but there is someone now as Lee Sin has headed down through that jungle. The wards had all timed out for the Spanish team. Flash away gave him just the extra distance to avoid that sonic wave, so Zed gets out of there. Did cost him his flash though.
There was many abilities used on Zed's escape, both the Living Shadow and the Flash, and he still nearly got caught again by that Sonic Wave. So next time round he's going to have to be really on the ball, especially as Gragas is about to get his ultimate too, so next time he's going to need a lot more dash distance.
Oh, and the damage coming out from that duo lane as the grasping roots held Lissandra under the towers. Lyra manages to escape on barely any health. Well, Gamble will continue pushing this wave in.
Godbro just laid down some good damage onto Zigmund on the bottom lane, and Thresh went to ward.
Teleport comes out actually from Lissandra in that top wave. There's the shield coming out from Santorin, and they turn this one back around on Lissandra. She's just used the teleport and already down to half health.
So yeah, there was Twitch taking that much damage from just a Rhythm that has yet to shop and has a Doran shield. It's not a great sign. I mean, he's pretty squishy and we know that's possible, but as soon as Lee Sin makes his way down here, of course that stealth mechanic is going to become null and void when Lee Sin is there. And with Godbro already landing this much damage, he's also about to hit 6. Twitch does have to be very careful how he plays this. And he plays this by recalling and going out, so that's a very good plan.
You can see that there we go. Oyugat has started to become that tanky champion already picking up that Glacial Shroud. That's going to give him the armor and the cooldown reduction, allow him to output more damage with those Acid Hunters. But again, it's an interesting team composition here. I'm actually pretty happy to see Oyugat being played a little bit. I know there have been discussions from teams on how exactly to use him. We'll see whether this is a valid way. And again, Zed under pressure here in the middle lane. Santorin looking for the angle on it, couldn't quite get it, so I'll just help Mikau push the lane.
Yeah, it's a nice try, but this time Zed was in a better position, and can't tell really whether that body slam was intentionally on the creeps or if he missed it, but I think it was on the creeps on purpose because of that push that he wanted to get started there. They also had Ruben nearby, so for a moment I believe their plan was push it into tower very quickly and then dive it. But I think that idea changed pretty rapidly.
As we head in to the later stages of the early game, which is a phrase that nobody really says, I'm not sure where that came from, but you can see that these 2v1s are considerably slower than we've seen in the past. Of course, there was that buff to towers in the early game a couple of patches back, which does slow these kind of pushes down, and without one of those heavy push lanes where you normally see Caitlyn in them. Both teams haven't really got considerable damage on the towers. Looks like those 2v1s are just working out to try and keep the solo laners safe. It's done a little bit better for the Danish team so far, as they are the only team to have picked up a kill from those 2v1 lanes. His Godbro will go aggressive onto Twitch in that bottom lane, trying to land the damage, but the exhaust will prevent a lot of it. Flash out from the Detonators. Meanwhile, up in the top lane once again, Gamble has taken down Lissandra, and then 3v1 in the top lane is just becoming a little bit difficult for Spain to deal with.
Yeah, and the constant presence of Lee Sin too is not making it any easier. Do you actually look at the CS difference here too because of that? Lissandra, who has a ranged ability set, has good wave clear with that, is on 30 CS to Riven 47 down in that bottom lane as a melee champion. Godbro doing very, very well, but he is about to lose his turret and will now have to back up.
Yeah, there was quite a prolonged period there where Twitch and Thresh were pushed all the way up to the turret, so that is one of the sacrifices that has to be made when you look at the amount of time that Santorin has spent up in that top lane, but he has allowed Gamble to get that kill alongside kill on Zyra, and they've picked up a lot of kills. They're looking for some more here with the Stranglethorns going down. Frederick dropped very low. Nice Dragon's Rage kick back in towards the rest of his team, but here comes Lissandro. Thought about using the Glacial Path. Will finally flash forward and use the Ring of Frost to pick up Gamble. Nice kill there for Lissandro.
Yeah, and we stayed a little bit too close instead of following his Lee Sin out in that situation. Until that point, the dive was very well executed, incredibly nicely done. But again, we're just outstaying his welcome ever so slightly. We do see Thresh and Twitch roam towards that mid lane a little bit, see if they can make something happen onto Gragas, but he is already pretty pushed and in a very safe position.
Yeah, I thought they might have been committing to a full rotation there, which actually could have been a good way of trying to draw some of that pressure down from Lee Sin if they were to 2v1, but they will send Twitch and Thresh down to the bottom lane because I think they're anticipating the swap out of the Danish team here, which it looks like they've called, although saying that Thresh is about to recall, so Spain's still maybe keeping their options open on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's traditional and most people would normally swap your lanes after taking down a turret. They haven't, they've left them bottom, but the Danish team have switched their lane. They've sent their top lane or their duo back down into that bottom position. Or I'd say duo, it's more of a tri-lane because of the way Lee Sin has been with them the entire time. And he's even come down with them here now and he's headed towards that Drake very rapidly. They do look like, with that early pink ward they had placed down there, they're going to pick this up more or less for free because Zed and Lissandra in no position to come and try and deal with it. Lissandra does have TP, but the Spanish squad are willing to let that go. They were not prepared at all.
Yeah, and that's one of those important times that you see happen often in games who look like Frederick was trying to engage. I didn't have the assault and battery and Godbro desperately trying to queue over the wall. I think you might need to use E there, Godbro, but couldn't quite make it.
No, he doesn't go over the walls. The last
Does it not? Oh, okay.
He never used to. When she was released, it was nothing. But in one of the recent patches for Riven, the third proc of your Q will now go over a terrain.
See, this is why I'm a caster and Godbro's a player. My apologies to Godbro on that one. He was completely right. But that was one of those important times that I'm a little surprised that Spain actually would recall with Thresh away from that. Whenever you get that tower going down, as the teleport does come out here, Roldan might be caught out. There's the ultimate onto Gamble. Glacial Path comes through, a nice ring of Frostfield Lock, 3 in place. The box has been used as well to keep them there as Fast Dragon gets dropped very low, and Gamble now trying to turn this around. You can see how much tankiness that Urgot does provide here. Looks for the death sentence, does Thresh in his dying moments. Fast Dragon is about to drop, but Mikau has taken a lot of damage behind. Will ignite Frederick, looking to pick that kill up. It is enough, and that overall is a 3-for-3 trade, as it might not be over.
It's not finished. Yeah,
He's still on his way into this lane, and there is no turret there for Santorin. Flash comes forward into the death mark. That is one deadly sin. So 4-for-3 trade overall, with quite an explosive fight at the tail end of that dragon.
Not entirely sure why he flashed on that, unless his Living Shadow was already on cooldown. I can't see it. There we go. It's back up now. Maybe it was, but still, kill's a kill. He made sure that was secured. He's taking a lot of damage on this tier 2 turret in the top lane as punishment.
And Godbro, meanwhile, as you were mentioning, has pushed a lot of this top lane down. That tower already under half health, and that's one of the dangers they've faced with Riven. She's such a mobile champion, as Fast Dragon actually calls the bluff there on that one. We'll realise that Godbro may have been hanging around in that top brush there waiting for her. But we'll force him away from the jungle. Vi now collecting her red. Looks like we're into one of these lull periods, but with Thresh in the mid lane, we may even see a little bit more focus towards trying to shut down these solo lanes here out of the Spanish team.
Yeah, with the turret score obviously evened up there too, that extra dragon is coming into play for DK, giving them a very slight 2,000 gold lead. Yet to see really anything too crazy from Mikau yet. I mean, we saw in the previous games he had some very big damage output and a very strong Gragas play, but so far all he's done is farm. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that's what got him to his terrifying status in the previous rounds. That's non-stop farm, but instead he's being ganked.
Oh, with the assault and battery and the death mark is going to be enough to allow Frederick to pick that one up with the final last hit. Now that will even up the kill score there, and Spain's starting to come back into this one a bit.
Yeah, we see a lot of ultimates burned in that bottom lane there as well, as the Danish team tried to try and fight it. The top lane got broke. Okay, popped his ultimate, went very aggressive with Fast Dragon, and then ran away.
Now we've reached a point, especially with those kills that went down onto Urgot in the fight that happened in bot, that Urgot's starting to get very tanky and get the damage from, as I alluded to earlier. It's a very different build on Urgot. It's not your standard Bloodthirster, Last Whisper or Infinity Edge. It's Glacial Shroud, Brutalizer, and in this case, a Hex Drinker to allow him to survive through some of the magic damage that is on Spain, of course, coming from Lissandra. And, I mean, this is the point where... Oh, actually, Twitch looked to go aggressive there, but found himself a Lee Sin. Santorin will try and get away, will be able to flash backwards, but will Zed look to chase? Doesn't look like the poison and the expunge is enough, so Midas to get out of that one.
Top lane, Godbro and Fast Dragon are going at it. They're going very hard. Godbro has no ult.
Yeah, and he dodges. Ooh, can't dodge a flash ring of frost on that one. Managed to dodge the ice shard first.
They both flashed at exactly the same time, but Godbro was just that half second too slow.
Explosive cask into, I believe it was the grasping roots there from Roldo. Managed to lock Vi down, but they didn't really have the damage to follow up on it. Spain will be forced out of that mid lane now.
Yeah, it was good wave clear and nice rotate from Roldo. The fight in the top lane would have been much better for Godbro if he'd had his ultimate, but he'd burned that earlier on very aggressively under the tier 2 turret, and of course he's not going to die with Lissandra in the tier 2 turret, so it was a big waste for him and it lost him his life.
Yeah, and he's going to be careful because that is a fully stacked Seeker's Arm Guard on Lissandra, so even though you know, that's not like the biggest of items, but it will help him against Riven when they are trading like that, and especially when you take into account that there are now 3 kills, that kind of evens up a little bit of the early game that Lissandra had, and of course with that teleport on the home guard, it's going to mean that Lissandra is going to be able to cover a lot of ground very quickly if they need to cross the map.
So it's back to a 2,000 gold difference thanks to that mid turret falling down. Just need the bottom turret to go now, but they've had Twitch and Thresh in here almost the entire time. And that's not something they've been able to pick up just yet. You see Lee Sin joining up with that Gamble Roldo combo again, as he's like to do so much. But they are heading towards the Drake area because they picked the first one up and the next one has respawned.
Yep, and you see the Oracle's picked up already by Roldo, looking to clear that one out. Hasn't quite spotted that ward inside the Dragon Pit though, and this is a good rotation from the Spanish team. They're going to cut off the Danes and try and just take down that mid turret. It will mean that they lose a little bit of the early pressure on Dragon and may end up losing this one to the Danes. Oh, look like Vi tried to get over the wall to smite that one away, couldn't quite get it, while the rest of his team is pushing it down. They get a turret in the top lane as well, and as of yet, Denmark haven't really been able to react to this one. There's 2 towers in the mid lane and 1 from the top gets stolen away in favour of Spain, and all they had to give up for it was that dragon.
Yeah, very much worth it as far as Spain are concerned right now, and Godbro may just be able to get caught out. Oh, brutal.
That is absolutely a big power play by Spain.
Play. This is brilliant play by Spain right now. They're going to grab themselves a 3rd turret here as well in this entire push, getting themselves a massive gold spike compared to just that 1 dragon they had to give up for it. Very, very nice play from Spain. Beautiful calls whoever made that one. And they're all out and alive. They are in a very good position now.
Yeah, and they will all get away from that. They may have been in danger of Santorin following up, but
no,
they really don't have the speed towards the end of that. I meant as they were starting to run.
No, sorry. It was more to the point is that the DK ping onto Baron there.
Oh.
And everyone started migrating towards us. Like, okay, you know they're low. They're just face-tank. That's how they've got the base. But rushing the Baron is not the right play here. Please don't do it. And they changed their mind away from it, but for a moment there, I was quite worried.
Now that's allowed some important items to be finished here. We saw that Zed had the Bilgewater Cutlass Brutalizer. That gold spike has allowed him to go all the way from the Bilgewater Cutlass to the Blade of the Ruin King and have those Ninja Tabi as well. So that really gives him a spike, as well as finishing off the Zhonya's Hourglass on Lissandra and the Infinity Edge on Twitch. So that's 3 crucial items in this composition that have been finished off because of that gold spike. So
exactly, each one of those champions there picks up 700. No, I can't do maths.
It's too early.
It is 450 gold. So it's a very nice, quick cash infusion that they managed to secure there. And of course, the kill onto Godbro that came for Zed as well would have helped him a little bit more as well. So very, very nice play by Spain. I cannot iterate that enough. And now with Roldo and centering getting caught.
Yeah, they've got to be careful here if they can get out. They did manage to lock down Lissandra, so couldn't quite get the Ring of Frost, but there is enough follow-up here from the rest of the Spanish team. Santorin desperately trying to get out with that safeguard, but he can't escape the clutches of Thresh. That's a double kill onto Twitch, who has rapidly now got himself to 4-0, and the Spaniards have really turned this game around.
Yep, it's a big wave of creeps bottom now. Riven was all the way down there doing golems at the start of that fight. And, well, they were caught out trying to de-ward the Baron pit.
Well, they will go aggressive onto Gamble. The Flay comes back with teleporting from Lissandra. Are they going to be able to pick this one up? Gamble has got the first kill of this engagement, and Godbro will get rooted backwards. So Santorin still dropped from the previous fight, wasn't able to engage there. That was a 1-for-1 overall.
Not sure why Gombro stayed in so deep on that one, to be honest. He could have got out of there, I think, a little bit earlier, and he also still had Flash. So if he'd have gone into the direction of his team and then flashed, he would have been out. But he went a bit deeper again, trying to go in onto the Sandra even after Zed had arrived. So slight misplay by him, but 1-for-1 is not the end of the world. And they did stop the Baron attempt that Spain were almost half going for. So there's something in it, but yeah. Ultimately, Santorin and Roldo getting caught out because they were trying to ward, trying to de-ward, and it all comes back again to a lack of vision.
Something I'm actually really surprised by Gamble, and I may be wrong, but again, Urgot is not a champion we've seen in a while, but especially the last times we've seen him, he's been more about getting towards the mana mune and the Mura mana, whereas it turns from tier. He's not even opted to go for the tier in the early game, and I have a feeling that that may lead to him not scaling particularly well as we get towards this later game.
The thing is, yes, that was a big thing for him before, but it was the same reason as it was a big thing for Jace, and it's now the same reason that it's no longer a big thing for Jace. It's not as powerful as it used to be. The stacking is a lot harder than it used to be. You don't really get the benefits from it as much, and he does a much better job if he just builds a Brutalizer, and in this case, a Hex Drink as well for the bonus magic resist.
Oh, nearly got caught out then. Good Stranglethorns will knock up a couple there from Spain. And Denmark are maybe getting the team fight that they wanted. They are quite low though, so they do have to be careful that there's no cleanup from the spray and pray out of Twitch. Manages to duck to get that lantern away from the fight, but look how low the Danes are from what was seemingly a good fight from them.
It was a very good fight for DK because of how everyone on the Spanish line grouped up when they saw Gamble was exposed and they saw the Vi could get in onto him. They were done. Would dive straight onto him. And then they got knocked up by that massive Zyra ultimate. They got snared by Zyra. They got nuked down because of the Greg Assault. And more importantly, Gamble survived because he immediately started channeling his ultimate on someone. And that gave him the bonus armor and magic resist to help him survive their dive. Zed then tried to skirt around the edge at the backside and came in a bit late. But by which point DK were already ready to peel for Gamble. They were already ready. They saw that Zed arrive. There was no one left to be a threat on Spain. They were already in the retreat, and they could all 5-man down in onto that Zed, save him from doing too much damage.
And now Roldo's opted for a slightly different build on a support than we've seen before. A lot of the times you'll see Zyra's still getting some sense of the gold per 5, as actually there might be a fight breaking out here. Santorin has been caught out. The ultimate Glacial Prison comes out from Lissandra. That will take him away from this, and Gamble's still low after the last fight. So Spain have a good few options here, and the first option in mind is the death sentence over the wall. There's a lot of damage that comes out from Gragas here as Zhonya's forced out from Fast Dragon, and that means that overall they do lose Medina, but manage to pick up 3 from the DK team.
Again, another great Gragas ultimate. Kind of saved them from losing anything more there. And I mean, if he hadn't landed that, they still had all their health. They could quite easily be doing a Baron now, which was initially their play. They wanted to bait, they take all the vision away from the Baron, then hide in the pit, killed someone, and in this case, Lee Sin was their first target when they saw him in the wards, and that's the perfect one, getting that smite off the board. Kill them, back out, grab themselves a Baron. Now, they saw Lee Sin, they killed him, perfect, done. They realized there was still an opportunity there to kill the low health Gamble as well, and went in to try and finish him off.
The Sultan Battery was used on Mika there, as I believe he was trying to steal away the blue buff. Does manage to get out of that one.
Yeah. But yeah, once they realised they could Gamble too, they went in for that. And yes, they got the gamble. Great, nice. But the time it took them to do that allowed Gragas to get there and throw that barrel over the wall. So they were then just way too low on health to actually follow up onto the Baron. But they still picked up a lot of nice kills.
Yeah, and this game is really just that dragon now separating the two teams. Denmark did a good job of recovering some of the losses that they made with that big power play that Spain managed to get themselves earlier. They know Zed's in the bottom lane, so Denmark may be looking to establish a little more control around here, but they don't have an Oracles and they are standing right on top of a ward, so I think maybe not the best.
I think they figured that out now.
Yeah.
As soon as they stopped running directly to the Baron in that bush, and then they realized that Spain had stopped rotating directly to the Baron, they know they'd been spotted, and that's the only place that ward may have been. So they just pushed the lane back up and realized it was a nice try, but it's not going to happen. And they had to go and deal with that Zed split push.
Yeah, and that Zed split push has meant that they've had to send people to both top and bottom lane. Top was already pushing in, and Zed managed to get that one in towards the turret. Now, Gamble being fairly tanky with this Frozen Heart is gonna, I would imagine, and I don't really want to call this in case it happens in the opposite way, but I would imagine that'll give him a lot more survivability against an all-in potentially from Zed. Zed does have 2 levels. Ooh, very smart there out of Gamble. Will realise that it didn't quite feel right with Zed off the map for quite so long, as he had been down in that bottom lane.
Yeah, I mean, he's just doing Zed's thing now. He's just split pushing. There's no one there that can really 1v1 him. I mean, if he wants to, he can go all in on Gamble and would easily kill him. So it's just a case of wave clearing and staying alive and keeping the turret alive as long as possible. But Zed isn't going to have to join the team fights for that reason, and I'd rather see Lissandra try and do it because she's got that teleport. Haven't really seen it too effective so far this game. There was a couple of nice attempts into the bottom lane, but Lee was always there to try and salvage something for it from DK. So I'd like to see him use it a little bit more now in the late game, especially as they already want to split push. Even if Zed is in the bottom lane, why not put Lissandra in the top lane and split push two lanes at once?
I'm really interested to know who the shot caller is for Spain, as they have made a power play again into the middle lane. This time, not quite getting enough from it to begin with, but they are getting a fairly good team fight, although Frederick does drop inside the base. They've been forced back out of this one, as Lissandra did get caught out inside the base. They will take 1 turret and lose Vi for it, but that could have been another chance for Spain to outposition Denmark.
Yeah, had a lot of potential in that, but they took that fight when they were outnumbered, and while Frederick went way too deep, otherwise he may have been able to get out of there. But ultimately, it's just inexperience. I think they're not waiting for your team, a bit too edgy, a little bit too keen to go in and dive that silly dive onto that turret, to be honest. But DK will welcome it. They will get back out on the map and they'll take control of their jungle back.
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe if they'd have just sat there and pushed it in a little bit, they might have had some more success.
Yes, definitely, especially with Zed split pushing bottom. As it was, they did just about get that tower on the way out, but that was a consolation prize. If they'd have just stayed in the siege mid for a bit, Zed would have picked that tower up anyway, and then would have been onto the inhibitor turret, and maybe they could have picked that up as a consolation prize instead.
And something else that they gave away is, because the Danish team were up around that Baron area, they've managed to establish significant ward control around that area, whereas when you look at the wards out of Spain, there isn't one anywhere near Baron. So not that the Danish team could sneak it away, but it's always something that you've got to be cautious of at this point in the game, is in making sure that your opponents cannot drop off the map and even bait you into that kind of fight.
Yeah, we just see a few barrels coming over the wall now. Mikau not quite doing the insane amount of damage he was in the last, or yesterday's games, to be honest, but he also hasn't picked up as many kills from now yet. He's still very, very farm, though, so you cannot ignore that Gragas.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, yesterday I think he had a little bit more free reign to pick up less defensive items to begin with. This time he has had that Zhonya's Hourglass as a second item, I believe. I think yesterday he did go for that Rabadon second, so it's less damage overall, but if Zed were to go on him, or if he starts to take a lot of damage, he can always just pop that Zhonya's and keep himself safe for a couple of seconds. And It looks like the Danish team, even though they are behind a little bit in gold, feel like they have this more significant pushing power here. They already see the top and bottom lane do have waves of creeps heading towards the Spanish base, so they will position themselves here in the middle lane and just kind of set up camp here and try and push the Spaniards back.
They have both the bottom and top lanes being pushed in by creeps too, so as you meant, they can just hold them, they can siege them, they can let those creeps do a bit of work. They will see someone go to deal with that creep wave soon enough. They're going to see Lissandra top. That won't prompt too much because she has TP, but they're going to see Zed bottom. That may prompt some kind of movement from her.
Yeah, and of course in situations where they're at 5v3 or even looking to rotate to put Lissandra in a 5v1 situation, Gamble's ultimate really means that there's almost no escape for their target, but this lack of vision control around the Baron area means that Denmark are able to drop off the map once they've seen Zed down there. They will obviously give away a little bit of control there to Zed. Ward goes over the wall by Vi, and can she steal this one away? Level 13 on both the junglers. That's a lot of wards going over to make sure that the Denmark team cannot get that. Godbro will drop very early on in this, and actually Twitch manages to take the Baron Nashor there. Roldo now forced to back out of this when the box has been used, will hold Gamble in, and they pick up a double kill onto Lissandra. This has gone somewhat horribly wrong here for Denmark. They're turning this one around, but meanwhile Zed in that bottom lane is still pushing away.
Yeah, and that was a beautiful fight from Spain, managing to abuse Lissandra's AoE and all their AoE, in fact, in that tiny tiny small space Baron pen, and Twitch firing over the wall using their spray and pray bonus range, able to actually be credited with the Baron kill while still laying down a massive amount of damage onto the entirety of the GK cube.
Now, what the tail end of that fight tells me, and I must admit I didn't catch it as the fight was happening, I have to assume that either Fast Dragon or Medina did a great job of holding Santorin and CCing him enough so that he couldn't smite, because his smite was still on cooldown. So that's why we saw Twitch pick up that kill. They have
no abilities to stop smite, so the simple fact of the matter is he missed it or was dead before the Baron was low, or he felt the Baron was low enough. Only suppression stops a smite, and there is no suppression on that Spanish team.
There we go. Neither jungler used
Sorry,
smite,
actually,
though.
that's not a complete lie.
Do they have?
It's not only suppression and knockbacks. If he is in the middle of a knockback, then you cannot smite. But still, there's nothing unless by pure perfection, the second he tried to smite, Vi's Q had hit him and he was in that tiny little knockback effect. I very much doubt it.
Does that mean you can smite if you're the target of Frozen Tomb? Just out of interest. Oh, okay.
Provided you're like frozen within range of the Baron, then yes, you can smite it.
Right, okay. But nevertheless, neither the jungler did smite there, and that's how Ziggy Madbro managed to pick that one up, so a bit.
Admittedly, it was
scramble.
probably quite hard to keep track of the Baron health bar during that fight. I could only say it myself because I had clicked it and it was in the bottom corner of my screen. The bottom lane, Gamble!
Oh, Campbell has been dropped there. Zed will pick that one up, but is now under a lot of aggression from Godbro. Will pick up the kill in return. However, there's 4 men from Spain pushing towards this top lane. They've got one wave of creeps with the cannon minion, but can they manage to push this in? Twitch will join them here. There is a reaction, however, coming from Denmark. The barrel will clear out that wave. Grasping Roots will hold Lissandra in place. There's the Frozen Tomb onto Mikko, drops him before he even gets a chance there. Godbro tries to get back out. Frederick will use the Assault and Battery to take them out. And now Spain will get the damage down onto that tower and turn their attention to their second inhibitor.
That beautiful rotate from Spain when that second dragon went down. They picked up 3 turrets from that. And then that great fight at the Baron Pit while they still had Zed split pushing the entire way really got this game for them.
I would really be interested to see who is the shot caller here for the Spanish team, because they have made some ballsy calls. Like, it takes quite a confident shot caller to go, okay, they're taking dragon, let's just take 4 towers at once. As they did manage to get 2 from the top lane in that exchange as well earlier on that second dragon. So The Spanish team are looking very confident in here, and actually, Ziggymad's having a pretty good game here. He may not have the 8 kills that Gamble has, but Twitch is an AD carry that can be a little difficult not to drop a kill on, because of course he has no escape ability like you see the Valkyrie from Corki, which is able to close a lot of, well, to gain a lot of distance from your opponents. Twitch, on the other hand, at 5-0 and 5 in this one, and has had a good game.
And he has, especially unsealing that Baron too. He's just had some very good positioning. His spray and praise have hit a lot of the important targets and as many as the DK members as possible. Now, I think it's just a matter of time. With 2 inhibs down, with both of those lanes pushing in, and with the split pushes that Spain have, it's just a matter of time before their creep waves come up, join in, and then they make that final dive, that final fight, because they are very, very strong right now. They've had some great focus, and they've had so much AoE that even while they are focusing that one target, the rest of DK is taken very, very low in the process, and then they can just mop them up afterwards.
Now Spain looking just to push every lane, and they know that the top and bottom lanes will be pushing on their own. The first wave of super minions is about to come through that top lane. And that means we'll see a reaction out of the Spanish team. Of course, this is one of the last patches that we'll see these stronger minions in the alternative lane, so it means their mid lane will push through as well. All the damage from Ziggy Bro. Use spray and pray to make sure they got that. There's the glacial path into the Ring of Frost. Is going to lock down the Danish team. And the Strangled Thorns actually will hold some of the Spaniards back. Dragon's Rage kick puts Twitch right in the middle of the fight. And Santorin's going to try and follow up, but there's a lot of damage coming out from Twitch. Gamble, on the other hand, might do a lot better job here, taking him down at the outskirts of this fight. There's a couple of members of the Spanish team that are very low here, and they might look to just end the game. Gamble is trying to put the damage down as best as he can. He is taking down the AD champions first, but there's 2 super minions still here. It's a triple kill. It's gonna be a quadra kill, but it won't be enough to stop this game from ending, as the 2 super minions is just too much there for one Urgot to deal with. And Spain managed to turn that game around with some magnificent shot calling.
Yeah, some very nice plays, some very nice decision making from that Spanish side, turned that game on its head. And that last fight there, the majority of it, Zed was just on the Nexus turrets. He killed the first one before anyone got close to him. Then they came over and tried to deal with him. So he joined the fight, killed them off a bit, and then went back to killing the Nexus turret. So that was a more or less a 4v5 for the majority of that fight. And they still came out in a very strong position and managed to finish off the Nexus to take game 1.
Yeah, and of course, game 1 of a best of 3 here to decide 3rd place in the IeSF 2013 World Championships for League of Legends. We will be back with game number 2 between Spain and Denmark in just a few minutes, so make sure you stick with us here on Chaos TV.